going, guys? It's K Cars, and in this video I wanted to give you guys a city driving review of the 2016 Dodge Challenger ScatPack. So I figured I did a video just like this with the Jeep, and pretty much the whole time I was comparing it to this exact car right over here. So I figured instead of just talking about it in that video, I would also make a separate video with this car. So let's go ahead and jump right in and drive around the city and see how it does. One thing that'll never get old about this car is that exhaust sound. Yeah, so honestly, I would say my favorite part about this whole car is that exhaust sound. Now, of course, stock, it's not going to sound like that. This is, I wouldn't say like highly modified, but it definitely is a modified exhaust. So far, it has long tube headers, catalyst mid pipes, mid muffler delete, and the stock catback. So if I got like a aftermarket catback from like Corsa, maybe, it'd be even more insane than it is right now. So definitely my favorite part. It definitely pops a lot as well. Has those pops and cracks that everyone loves. Well, not everyone, but you know what I mean. So anyway, starting off in the Challenger here, like I said, this is a 2016 Challenger ScatPack, and we're going to be seeing how it drives around the city. So obviously this car is much bigger than my Jeep that I made a video on previously. So as you see right here, we do have to be a lot more careful when driving through tight turns, especially in a parking garage like this. But yeah, for now, let's just pay attention to that awesome exhaust sound. Sounds so good. Yeah, so I mean, taking turns like this in a parking garage, you really have to be careful if there's like oncoming traffic coming towards you, because you have to take really wide turns in this car. And if it's a tight space, like in a parking garage right here, then you definitely have to like make sure that you know it's clear. Like right over here, I'm basically taking up the whole road right here on that turn. But yeah, this just shows you how big of a car the Challenger actually is. I don't even know if you guys can hear me right now because of that exhaust, but I don't want to roll the windows up because it sounds so good. So hopefully you guys can just enjoy the exhaust for now a little bit more. Get this downhill right here. There we go. So if I ever just want to like drive around for fun, then this car is such a fun car to drive. And I know in my previous videos I have talked about how big it is and how heavy it is, but all that stuff, you know, it definitely does matter if you're going to be doing like any kind of serious racing with this car. But I mean, just to have fun with this thing, it really doesn't matter. So it's more exhaust clips here. Sounds so good with that exhaust. And like I said, even stock it sounded good. So it was just a lot more quiet than this, but I definitely love this exhaust setup right here. So onto an actual road outside of the parking garage. As you see, we definitely do have some visibility issues when you compare it to the Jeep, but then again, this car is built different, of course. Another thing you have to be careful with this car is little dips. Like, you know, right here, that wasn't too bad, but if you're in like an unknown area maybe, or like a new road that you're driving on, there could be like construction work, a bunch of like steel plates on the road maybe, speed bumps, those are everywhere. Those are all things that you really have to be careful with when you're driving this car, even if you're on the stock suspension. Now, I'm not gonna like demonstrate it. I don't wanna like, you know, I'm not gonna purposely scrape this car on a speed bump, but just take my word for it that it is pretty easy to scrape this car, even if you have the stock suspension. Now, of course, this car, because it has long tube headers, it does scrape a little bit more easily than it would if it had the stock headers. And that's because they just hang down a little bit lower. never gets old. And that was literally like a third of the way down with the throttle. So it really does sound insane. So I know a lot of people wonder about the blind spots with this car, and I'll tell you right now, they are pretty bad. I have heard that the blind spots in the Camaro are a little bit worse than this car. But if I look back real quick, you guys can probably see that there is a pretty good blind spot back there. Of course, there is one on the driver's side as well, but it's much easier to like look out the window like here. Get some downshifts here, some cracks. There we go. If I'm driving in like an unknown area, like unknown roads, then I really would not prefer to drive the Challenger, because I could easily scrape up the bottom of this car, tear off the splitter, and yeah, I just don't want to do that kind of stuff with this car. That's why I like driving the Jeep when I'm driving in an unknown area, because if I'm driving over like a construction area or speed bumps, then I really don't have to worry about anything in that car. But I also did mention that this car is a much better highway driver, just because of the performance that this car has. So on the highway, you definitely do want to have good acceleration and good braking, because just in case anything does happen, you know you can stop better and accelerate better than probably like 95% of the cars on the road. And that's definitely important, because it can definitely keep you from having an accident or crashing. And that also applies to city driving as well. So if you're like merging onto, I don't know, if you're like turning right and you have to yield to oncoming cars, and it's like a blind yield, and you can still turn right, then this car would be better for that, because if there's a car coming and you pull out, then you could definitely accelerate fast enough to clear that space, so the driver behind you wouldn't have to slam on the brakes. And with the Jeep, usually that isn't possible, because you just can't accelerate fast enough. So here's the area where I took the Jeep. We have a steel plate right there. I had to drive on the other side of the road. Here we have a speed bump. Have to drive like half a mile an hour just to make sure I don't scrape this on the headers. There we go. And here we have another little bump. And of course I have to drive on the complete opposite side of the road, which of course isn't ideal. And there's a lot more bumps up there, but I'm not even gonna try those, because we probably would actually scrape. But like I said, with the Jeep, we won't have any issues driving over any kind of like bumps or steel plates or construction zones or anything like that, which is why I definitely do like the Jeep for unknown areas. Of course, speed bump right here, so I'm gonna avoid it. I feel like with the Jeep, I just have a lot less stress and anxiety when driving like anywhere. And here we have another huge pothole that I'm just gonna avoid like this. And of course, if there was oncoming traffic, I would have to drive into it, or at least stop until I could avoid it. Another speed bump right here that I have to hold up traffic for. Luckily, there's nobody behind me, but if there was, then I would have to hold up traffic. Bunch of bumps right over here. Now, obviously, this isn't anything too terrible for the car, but still, if you guys are like car guys, then you understand going over bumps like this hurts, even if it doesn't actually like hurt the car too much. You guys know what I'm talking about, hopefully, unless it's just me. But yeah, so that basically covered like the whole potholes and construction zones, steel plates, speed bumps, everything like that. And same thing with like dips. If you're going over a dip, it's likely that you could scrape, and you might also like tear the front splitter off. Hopefully not, but that's just things that you have to be really conscious of when driving this car. Nice Subaru. So yeah, like right here, if there were a car coming, I could easily speed up and clear the gap. It's so much fun driving this car. That was probably like 30% throttle right there. This car has so much potential, you can barely even unleash it on like public roads. For me to actually feel safe unleashing the full potential of this car on public roads, well, first of all, I would never do that because it's illegal. But hypothetically speaking, if I were to do that, it would literally have to be like at least half a mile of straightaway with 0 cars around. Like, that's my criteria for actually like pushing this car to its limit, is there has to be no cars around, and it has to be like at least half a mile of straightaway, and like no obstructions or anything like that. Because you never know with this kind of car, this kind of power, especially if you're on the stock tires, then this thing is pretty easy to like make it get loose. Sounded pretty good, that BMW. But yeah, so when you're coming up to like a stoplight or something, then you really don't have to worry about like slamming on the brakes or anything like that, because these brakes are actually pretty good. They are Brembos, the ones that came stock with the ScatPack shaker. Now, the stock Jeep brakes really aren't that great. Of course, you know, they're not terrible, they stop you, but definitely not as good as the Challenger. So like if you have to slam on the brakes for any reason, then you have nothing to worry about, basically. So right now we're driving into a more urban area, and you know, one thing I don't like about driving in the city with a car like this is that it's really difficult to find a spot where you can actually unleash the full potential of this car. So I don't know, like the Jeep is fun, it's fun to drive on road, but of course it's made to drive off-road. That's really what it's made for, obviously. And I don't know, the Challenger just needs a lot of room to actually like fully enjoy. Of course you can enjoy driving slow and just downshifting and doing some short accelerations, but you know, giving it full throttle, full power, that's really where the fun's at. So we're driving into a very urban area right now, and I'll show you guys how it does with like stop and go stuff here. So you really just have to be aware of your surroundings in this car, because like I said, it is a lot more difficult to actually like see everything, especially because the hood is so long. You do have blind spots in the back, even in the front here. It's kind of hard to tell where the edge of the car actually is. So you just have to like make sure that you're aware of your surroundings at all times. And sometimes that does mean taking a longer time at stop signs. We got a nice Bentley Bentayga right ahead. I think it's pretty nice. I think one of the first ones that I've actually seen in person. Not bad. Yeah, stuff like that where you have like a stop sign in the middle of the street and you have to like drive, like maneuver around it because there is a car blocking the road. Stuff like that is a lot easier to do in the Jeep. But of course, I can't really complain because this thing sounds so much better. And obviously I can't be doing anything too crazy in an urban area like this with a whole bunch of people around, as you guys can see. And I'm sure there's cops scattered around everywhere in this area. Another Bentayga, nice. Actually, I don't even know if that is a Bentayga. I don't really know Bentleys too well, but it is a Bentley SUV, so I'm assuming it's a Bentayga. But yeah, this car is definitely a lot of fun to just cruise around in. Like, it really doesn't get old in my opinion. Even if you're just driving slow like I am right now, it's so much fun to just like, you know, downshift, listen to all the cracks and pops. And even sometimes you'll get people like, you'll see people like giving you a thumbs up and stuff, and it's so much fun. And going on to the suspension of this car, so it definitely is stiff, but I wouldn't say that it's too stiff, because when you compare it to like a lifted Jeep like my XJ, it is pretty stiff as well. So this car is kind of like a sports stiff, obviously. Like, it's made to be stiff because it helps it handle better. And the Jeeps aren't really like made to be stiff, I guess. But the suspension that I have on the Jeep is a lot more stiff than the stock suspension on that thing. So yeah, I mean, but with that Jeep, I'm not really scared of like taking speed bumps like fast, because that kind of suspension is made to handle like bumps and rocks and everything like that. This kind of suspension isn't made to handle that kind of like off-road abuse, I guess. So you really just have to be more careful when going over bumps and stuff. See, like right over here, I can't pull out far enough to actually see if there's oncoming traffic, because there's a car in the way, and this car has a very long hood. We got a V6 Challenger right here. But yeah, so definitely downsides to this car, but obviously there's also a whole bunch of upsides, and the advantages of this car far outweigh the disadvantages. Yeah, I could literally cruise around in this car all day, and that's not even like exaggerating at all. I've literally cruised around in this car, I want to say till like 3 or 4 one night. It was so much fun. Because it literally never gets old. I really wish I could find a spot around here that's like a long straightaway where I could just like have some fun, you know? But it's really difficult to actually find spots like that if you're in an urban area like this without actually like having other cars around you. Like obviously there are straightaways in a city, but there's most likely always going to be other cars around you. Even if you're like in the middle of the night, there's always going to be cars. So I guess it wouldn't hurt to cruise around for a little bit longer and see if we can find a nice straightaway that's empty. Like if this car on the right here were to drive out in front of me, then I could easily slam on the brakes and wouldn't have any issues stopping and avoiding an accident. And when it comes to a Jeep, I don't think I'd be able to do that. So with a Jeep, you also have to keep in mind, it's not easy to like handle that car and make quick maneuvers with it, just because of how, I guess just like how it's built. It's not built to perform or like take turns quick. That brings me to my next point with this car. It definitely does handle very good for how much it weighs. I know a lot of people kind of talk badly about how this car handles, but I really don't have any complaints with that. I have taken this car on a road course. Man, I'm getting sidetracked now. This road would be perfect without any cars. We can get some space open. Oh my god, that's way too much fun in this car. I wish I could have kept going, and I definitely would have if there weren't cars coming up. Because when it's dark like this, you never know like which one of these cars could be a cop. And if you get caught doing something like that, especially around this area, you're basically done from what I've heard. And I really don't want to do that right now. I would kind of like to keep my license and be able to drive. But yeah, that was a perfect spot to do something like that. As long as there were no cars, which it was clear for me, the cars ahead of me were way ahead of me. And I stopped whenever I saw other cars oncoming on the other side. Get some downshifts here. And you guys saw there, I started in second gear from that roll, and it hooked up instantly, no issues. Now with the stock tires, I would not have been able to do that like that. So it really shows you how much of a difference tires actually make. Now I always thought, whenever I first got this car, I was like, you know, more power, you know, the tires are fine, it's just I just need more power and all that. But tires really do make a huge difference.